The Fed15 podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a financial planning practice serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our hosts are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of either Raymond James or Serving Those Who Serve. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc.
Welcome, everybody, to the Fed15 podcast presented by Serving Those Who Serve. If you're new, each week we will discuss the latest news that Feds need to know in 15 minutes-ish or less. So whether you are a seasoned federal employee or just starting out, we've got you covered. So grab your coffee, your energy drink, your green juice, whatever it is that moves you through the day, kick back, and we will tell you what you need to know, but probably missed because we take the time to read all the stuff that you don't have time. We're your host. I'm Dan Sipe, and I am joined by the fantastic and hopefully flood-free Katelyn Murray.
So far, so good, Dan. At the time of recording, we are kind of battening down the hatches and weathering Hurricane Helene as she kind of battles her way up the East Coast, where obviously, a lot of our clients are in the DC metro area because we serve feds, but we have clients in all 50 states. And we are very much, our hearts are going out to those who are affected by the hurricane. Hope that everybody is able to weather the storm and is adequately prepared, including some family, because I've got a brother in Georgia and I think he's getting hit pretty hard right now with all the wind. It's pretty crazy. So
yeah,
thinking of everybody.
He might be playing feetsball in it this weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I heard that the Colorado USF game is still going on Saturday, so that's definitely going to be a slog.
Oof. Yeah. Got to watch out for trench foot on that one.
Very much so.
We love a World War I joke in the morning.
Absolutely. We need to keep that rolling so people never forget about it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how we hang on to words like cockamamie.
Mm-hmm. The important stuff.
Got a pretty interesting full show for you this week. We'll be talking about all manner of survivor benefits, be they CSRS, FERS, or Social Security. And Katelyn, you've got some information about something that we hope we never see, but it does happen from time to time, and that is pay freezes. And what does that do to our feds?
Yeah, absolutely. So great piece on the blog this week on potential pay freezes. This is obviously not a super happy subject, but it is something that, you should be educated on. You should be prepared for potentially as a federal employee. This could very well impact you. Also, state government employees also, are impacted by this oftentimes. But potential pay freezes particularly impact the cost of living adjustments, our COLAs at the beginning of the year. None are expected right now, so please do not panic. It's wise to kind of know how pay freezes work, though, and to have a solid plan in place that can support your family, maintain contributions to your benefit, keep you on pace for retirement. It's sort of like prepping for a hurricane, right? There may not be one coming, but you should have your water jugs in the closet. You should, have a plan to fill up the bathtubs and those sorts of things. So this is kind of a have a plan. It's particularly timely in that aspect. So federal salaries and politics, unfortunately, are somewhat intertwined. When it comes to feds' salaries, the processes for freezes, raises, and bonuses is fairly unique. So when we have a situation of, a pay freeze is going to be instituted or they're thinking about instituting a pay freeze, the White House proposes that freeze. And then congressional appropriation committees debate and authorize it, passing it on to Congress. And then the third kind of finalizing step in the process, Congress votes on that legislation. And if approved, that's when the pay raise goes into effect. Now, normally they have a time limit. In 2011, we did see a pay freeze that lasted for 2 years for rank and file employees. And the 2019 Consolidated Appropriations Act froze pay for senior officials. That actually remains in effect today. So important to kind of note that. Now, the pro to a salary freeze is that typically it doesn't it doesn't affect step increases or bonuses. So promotions still result in pay raises. If you're taking on more work, you are getting a pay raise increase. However, your salary won't increase during the freeze if you're not up for a promotion or bonus. Remember, this is affecting those COLA adjustments primarily. Now, the impact of a salary freeze, obviously reduced spending power. If your salary is not changing, you're not getting that cost. Remember, COLA stands for cost of living adjustment. The cost of living typically is still rising, but your salary is not. So inflation can sort of eat away at purchasing power during the time period of that pay freeze. Also, a potential effect is lowered retirement contributions. If you are someone who is sort of counting on that COLA to automatically increase your retirement contributions, your TSP contributions every single year, that's not going to happen, obviously, in a pay freeze scenario. So minimum contributions in FERS or CSRS are salary based. A freeze can decrease FERS contribution and, of course, TSP contribution, and then employer match as well, because that's tied to your salary. Which could potentially slow the growth of your retirement accounts if you don't have a plan in place to kind of bump those up with other funds. So strategies to reduce those impacts of a pay freeze. You want to build a robust investment portfolio. I know we talk about this a lot. TSP is not the only thing you will ever need. It is far from it. Building a robust investment portfolio gives you options that can help you manage salary freezes and boost retirement earnings. You want to consider, factors like your health, retirement goals, midterm goals, like potentially paying for college. You want to look at taxes. You want to look at estate planning concerns, obviously, as you're building this out, and risk management as you're figuring out how to allocate those funds. But having funds that are outside of your employer sponsored accounts can be a very powerful strategy. Now, you also, and this one probably honestly should have come first, you want to build an emergency fund. You want to keep that emergency fund in a high yield savings account. Now, I know the Fed just reduced interest rates, so we're all mourning as we get the emails from our banks that our yield on our high yield savings is dropping from 4.75 to 4.5 to 4. But you want to have that emergency fund set aside in the highest yield savings account that you can so that you can weather the storm with a pay freeze. Again, this is short-term money. If we're stockpiling too much money in a high yield savings, you may want to look at something like a brokerage account and building out that investment portfolio. But the emergency fund is kind of foundational. And then the other thing is to kind of look at your retirement contributions. Obviously, salary freezes on cost of living adjustments are going to have an impact. However, if you've got wiggle room where you can still kind of afford to bump up that retirement contribution, or at least keep it at a minimum to ensure that you get the full employer match, you want to make sure that you're doing that. So obviously preparation is key here. Just like a hurricane, you can't prep the day that it makes landfall, right? You got to prep in advance. So even though it's not a topic that we love to dwell on, we want to make sure that folks are prepared and ready to weather any storms that they may encounter in their journey as a Fed. And so, being prepared for federal pay freezes, having a plan in place makes sense. You want to have a plan for the pay raise, you got to have a plan for the pay freeze too. So that's what we've got on that, Dan.
Great insights.
Yeah. And now you are going to talk with us a little bit about, another aspect of planning, survivor benefits. So looking
Absolutely.
at all the different array of survivor benefits, walking us through that.
Absolutely. Before I jump in on that, I would be remiss if I did not give a round of applause to the House and the Senate and to the President for passing the stopgap funding and signing it into law. Big props to all of the members on the Hill and the leadership who put the people ahead of politics. So, absolutely. So, that's why I'm in the pink today to go along with that. By the time you see this, the shutdown will be but a memory, but we're always here in the trenches with you. So, yes, survivorship. One of the things I've said throughout my entire career is federal service is back-end loaded. because, pensions and things like that come in at the end are incredibly valuable. The ability to keep, your health insurance in retirement at a full subsidy from the Fed, incredibly valuable. So another place where federal service is back end loaded is that survivorship, your ability to care for loved ones, God forbid, after you are gone. So I'm going to do a flyover here because we've got a great article that I want you to read. Okay, head over to the Fed Zone. That's fed-zone.com. You need to take a moment to read this. Do not believe that less is more when it comes to getting information about how things work. So, quick flyover. So, under CSRS, essentially, you can leave a survivorship annuity from around $22 a year to 55% of your pension. Under FERS, you have a choice between 25% and 50%. Additionally, and people don't think about this as survivorship, you can designate who inherits your TSP. So you want to have these things in mind because they are benefits that you have earned. The other thing, you have the ability to make sure that your spouse can keep health insurance in retirement through that survivorship. People miss that way, way, way too often. And if, God forbid, somebody passes away in service, there's also something called the basic employee death benefit. Not going to go into the nuts and bolts of that right now, but we have that on the site. Social Security also offers survivor benefits. Most CSRS folks will not be encountering that, but since FERS is eligible for Social Security, you will see it. A couple of rules and regs there. The benefits start for the surviving spouse at age 60, or if they are disabled, age 50. Now, there is no age requirement if the spouse is caring for the child of the deceased worker and that child is under the age of 16. There is a little marriage rule associated with this. So with Social Security, have to be married at least 9 months before death, unless the death is accidental or in the line of duty. And there are a couple of quirks with remarrying. If your survivor remarries before the age of 60 or be age 50, or the age 50 if they're disabled, that can disqualify them from the benefits. That's an important thing to understand. So one of the big things that you really want to invest time and quality thought in is those survivor benefit decisions relative to your CSRS or FERS pension. And I'm going to put this out there right now. I'm drawing the line in the sand. I'm picking the fight. If somebody is talking to you about not taking a survivorship and replacing it with some sort of financial product, flee. Okay. All y'all who think that's a great idea, you know where to find me. Okay. I've been blowing these things up for close to 40 years because all too many times math is missed. Nuances of how the program works are missed. So just hit delete on those types of things. Well, then when we get into whether it would be full survivorship or reduced survivorship or no survivorship, one of the things that, and I'm happy to make time for any of our feds out there that want a one-on-one explanation about this. If you are a dual fed family, a lot of times I'll hear people say, well, we both have a pension, so there's no reason for either of us to take a survivorship. I would submit that one possible advantage to a dual fed family having at least minimal survivorship is that you build in a layer for potential long-term care. Because where that hits you the hardest is when you're alone. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in my own family. There's a lot of care given by a spouse. And then when, God forbid, that spouse is gone, then you're paying somebody to do it in a lot of instances. So having those additional funds, I'm not saying that's an absolute, but happy to talk it through with you. Be very, very careful about just saying no survivorship.
Yeah, it certainly is cheaper than the premium on a long-term care insurance policy. That's a really good point, Dan. I mean, what you pay on survivor benefits is a whole lot cheaper than what you're looking at in long-term care, either private sector or through the federal program.
And the other thing to remember with those survivorship costs, they are reductions, not deductions, which means they come out pre-tax, which means their actual true field cost to you is lower. But then the survivorship is based on the original unreduced amount.
Right. Right.
And that's subject to COLAs and everything else as it goes. I really wish that both CSRS and FERS were better at explaining this. I'm happy to be the one who's better, but I'm not fresh as springtime anymore. I'm not going to be here in 100 years, folks. So, check out the webinars we've done on it, check out on our podcast, check on our articles where we really dive into, why the survivorship is actually beautifully costed out for you. So a couple of thoughts in closing. When you're thinking these things through, make sure that you bake in retirement needs and your spouse's retirement needs. Take into consideration the various income sources, be that Social Security, savings, life insurance, investment accounts, but also factor in that Social Security numbers could change. You have 2 coming in. Now it's going to go to the higher one. Important things to understand. Evaluating your health and your life expectancy. If you're healthy people, and a lot of people are trying harder and harder to be healthy people, you need to plan for the long haul. And that includes your spouse. So the likelihood that a federal pension could be paying out to someone all the way into their 90s is getting higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. But the best thing you can do is educate yourself. Hands down, the best thing. So, Katelyn, guess what? Guess who offers a free Understanding Your Survivor Benefits webinar? Guess who?
Who, Dan? Who?
That would be Serving Those Who Serve. And I'm surprised you didn't know that. Thank you for lobbing me that softball. No, seriously. Okay, folks, we are not the ones that we have all you need jammed into 1 3-hour webinar. We're not those people. No, we do another webinar. And yes, that means a little bit of extra time. But if it gets you the knowledge to make the best decision that takes care of you and your family for decades to come, it is well worth it. So check out our Understanding Your Survivor Benefits webinar. It features the incomparable Ed Zerndorfer. It will not disappoint you.
Absolutely.
So don't miss it.
Love it. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. There's a ton of information. I think the best thing you can do is educate yourself. And the great news is that educating yourself can be free if you use the resources that we put out on the Serving Those Who Serve site. We got webinars, we got blogs, we got podcasts, all sorts of different mediums to get the information that you need to know regarding your federal benefits. So
take the time now so you can just enjoy the time later.
Absolutely. Speaking of time, I believe that's all that we have for today. But Dan and I will be back next week to bring you all the latest updates that you need to make informed decisions about your career and financial well-being as a Fed.
And hit that subscribe button. So subscribe to this podcast on our YouTube channel and Spotify so you never miss an episode. And please, please, please share it with your friends and colleagues. They will thank you, as will we.
Indeed. For more information on the topics covered in today's show and more, emphasis on the more, be sure to check out our blog at blog.stwserve.com. While you're there, you can subscribe to our newsletter, The Weekly Serving, to get all the latest news for Feds delivered straight to your inbox every week.
And don't forget, I already mentioned one of them. We have those live webinars every single month, and 2 that you should not miss that are coming up would be our financial planning webinar hosted by the incomparable Katelyn Murray. And that will be on October 10th from 1 until 4. And why don't you just pop back in 5 days later for the TSP webinar hosted by my other favorite co-host, Chelsea. And that will be on October 15th, also from 1 till 4. Sign up for one, sign up for both, sign up for all. Your future self will thank you. And if you are that one-on-one special type person, hit us up at askSTWS at STWServe.com and we can schedule a one-on-one with you, answer your questions, explain how stuff works. Just hang out. We're actually a pretty fun crew. So you can check us out that way as well.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Fed15. I'm Katelyn Murray.
And I'm Dan Sipe.
And we will see you next week. Stay dry, everybody.
Absolutely.